My breath clouds, and I shiver as I make my way down the long passageway to the Annex. A young man, one of the new soldiers, opens the door I hit and holds it for me, standing to the side to let me pass. I nod at him in thanks and step through. The next segment of the corridor is colder than the last. Where before there were only white walls and quietly bubbling cylinders of water, there are now subtle and swirling mists down by our feet. Frost lines the glass, and the scientists in here are all adorned in thick coats and boots. I zip up the front of my own coat and wish I'd done as requested and worn more layers. The conversation between the scientists ahead of me is quickly frozen out. And soon, the only sound becomes the gentle backing breeze of the filters, the taps of our shoes against the ground, and the distant echo beyond the icy walls. In the next segment of the Annex, the walls are literally ice, and the breeze of the filter, whilst still subtle, is sharp and bitter against my skin, arctic to the bone. My place of work is dissimilar to most others. We house objects here, supernatural or generally sense-defying items of particular anomaly, objects that we cannot prove even originated in our plane. And down here, in this Annex, we keep the ones that require a certain temperature. As we descended down a series of steps into the bluish haze of the Annex, I clench and unclench my fingers to encourage the warm blood flow. All the scientists are wearing masks and goggles. I look around to see if I can recognize any, but it's mostly impossible to tell who they are. I hit, between the walls of ice, an off-shooting passageway branches suddenly to the right, and our little group moves to hit down it. I linger a little at the back, looking to my left as we pass by a plexiglass wall built into the ice, and the shining placard there that reads, Object 44, catches distinctly in the light. Behind the glass is a roughly room-sized, low-ceilinged cavern, and in the center is the containment room's namesake, Object 44. Object 44 is not dangerous. It is not kept under lock and key, and indeed, the plexiglass simply ends before it reaches the opposite wall of ice, meaning that there isn't even any door separating the object from the main walkway. Glancing ahead, down the corridor after my fellow scientists, I take a quick step to creep into the object's enclosure. It's kept down here simply because of the temperature. It only operates if it's sufficiently cold. Object 44 is slightly taller and perhaps about 1 meter wider than your average human, and has roughly the appearance of a vending machine adorned in a curious pattern of blue and black. On the right-hand side of the object are 5 very slightly indented grooves, about coin-sized. I do as one does to activate this object, and I splay my fingers on my right hand, placing a fingertip into each one of these grooves. A light shines from the middle of the machine as I do this, fast and brief, and then as quickly as it appears, it is gone. A subtle whirring begins from the heart of Object 44, and I watch as a faint, flickering white dot fades into view behind the object's glass-like screen. This dot is also about the size of a coin. Then, as always, a liquid trail of deep blue starts to leak from the location of the dot, all behind the glass screen, of course. It flows to the right and creates a watery, uneven line, and my eyes follow it. After a few inches, this line branches out. A second line appears and trails off in a different, though still rightward direction. Then a third, and a fourth. These subsequent lines bubble in yellow. I've always likened it to lemonade. That's what it looks like. Eventually, all the liquid lines, both blue and yellow, reach the edge of the screen and their journeys are complete. A moment more, and they all fade from view entirely, the dot with it. The display is done. I withdraw my fingers. Object 44 supposedly shows you impending choices. The blue line represents the path you are set on, and the yellow trails represent potential choices that will noticeably impact your immediate future. Not particularly helpful, is it, miss? A voice asks from behind me. I jump at the sound, but it's only the young man from before, the soldier. Ah, no, not particularly, I reply, smiling awkwardly at him. I don't even know what I was expecting, really. We'd better go rejoin the group, the soldier says with a friendly gesture, and I nod. We leave Object 44 behind and hurry down the passage behind the others. The item of my study lies down here. My works have been read and reread and peer-reviewed, and my application to take part in its latest experiment was granted. Just as well, I think to myself, since I was part of the team that discovered it all those years ago. I had to lie in my psychological assessments, of course. Can't have them finding out about my little brother. That might be enough to remove me from the experiments altogether. The passageway I hit widens out into a large cavern. There are rooms here, rooms with glass walls built into the ice. No objects behind these walls, only scientists working busily away. My heart starts to hammer, slowly at first, but then faster, heavier. This is it. It's right there. In the center of the room, and illuminated by an enormous overhead floodlight, is the object in question. Object 5. Object 5 was discovered by a team of expeditionaries, myself included, in Norway's Troms Mountains almost 10 years ago. Nicknamed the Door before receiving its official object classification, it stands as a 2-meter tall doorway of carved, frosty stone. It's an archway, almost, though a touch more rectangular. Object 5 is adorned with various interlinked runes, though the most obvious is carved into the doorway's keystone, the large one at the top and in the middle. The rune there looks something like a capital R, carved with only 4 straight lines, and appears deeper than all the rest.
Rebecca?
Calls a red-headed man, half illuminated in the floodlight's glare. He beckons me over to join the others, and I swallow a rush of anxiety. An invisible energy thrums from the stones. We can all feel it. The man who called my name lifts his goggles and lowers his face mask, smiling politely at me, and indeed at everyone. "Let's get you kitted up, Rebecca," he says to me, and waiting for my nod of confirmation, he raises his hand in a wave to a tech team at the side, and I am bustled into a side room and prepared for what's to come. This preparation involves being fitted with a jacket-like harness connected to a long line of hard but flexible rope-like cord. I am fitted with a headset and a series of small cameras. My boots are replaced with ones of higher quality, and I receive a face mask of my own. I am equipped with a pair of fine thermal gloves and a belt lined with potentially useful equipment. I am then set down at a desk and asked to read and sign a series of contracts that will give the oversight team here the permission to forcibly return me from my mission at any point they deem relevant and necessary. I am required to sign and agree that the team is not liable for any physical harm or damage that I might undergo during this process. I've seen copies of these contracts before. I know what they entail, and I don't think they'll be relevant. I sign them quickly. It's all rather bewildering, honestly, but before I know it, I am back in the center of the room surrounded by my peers. The red-haired scientist in charge here, a man named Terrence, draws his conversation to a close and returns to his place on the podium beside Object 5. The atmosphere drops once again, and silence settles as we all wait for him to speak. "Object 5, he says eventually, gesturing to the stone doorway. "This evening, our own Rebecca will be undertaking an expedition through 5's gateway to the plane that it shows us." He clears his throat and rubs his hands together. "We know from ongoing experiments that Object 5's plane is consistent in terms of geology and biology, though we still, to be quite frank, haven't the faintest idea where it might be, nor the plane's implications. nor indeed does it help that the physical geography, which is to say the location beyond the doorway, seems to change each time. He opens his hands. Physical man-made structures. Curious geographical anomalies. We have barely scratched the surface as to the significance of Object 5's anomalous properties. But here's hoping today we might discover a little more. He gestures to me, and all the eyes in the room turn my way. Rebecca was a part of the team that first discovered Object 5 in Trums almost a decade ago. Though it's only in the past year that experimentation with 5 has become viable. I also don't think that it will surprise anyone to learn that we struggle to source volunteers anymore. Terrence rubs his chin, then steps down off the podium and walks towards me. He clasps me on the shoulder, then checks behind me, ensuring that the rope-like cord is firmly connected. And he checks for a thumbs up from the duo operating the great reel that the cord connects to here in the facility. You understand that you will not be able to take the harness off? He asks me, and I reply that I do. He fastens the harness a little tighter, then clicks a lock into place. It makes a small electronic beep as he does so. You understand why? He asks me. And again, I reply that I do. A consistencies with expeditionaries who venture through the doorway, he says. As you well know, Rebecca, is that the further they go, the more they want to go further. Which is to say, the less likely they are to want to come back. I know, Terrence. I reply. It's okay. I've been through the training. He nods, then gestures for me to step up to the podium, right in front of Object 5. My stomach lurches, and I have to control my breathing as I step on up, waiting with rising anxiety as Terrence calls for the experiment to begin. Clear the floor, he calls out. Phase 1, temperature to be lowered. The lights in the room all dim, and the great floodlight slowly powers down as the temperature drops further. I look to my left at the scientists who came here with me, as they huddle together and shiver. And Phase 2, atmosphere adjustment, calls out Terrence. An arctic mist begins to seep from the walls and swirl gently around my ankles. I look to my right. On the wall is a large LED screen comprised of a pinprick of blue light dots, a reading of minus 13 degrees Celsius. Blinks and flickers into minus 14 degrees Celsius. Then finally, after a beat, it drops further to minus 15 degrees Celsius. And the energy radiating from the door increases tenfold. A subtle murmur goes up around the room as the runes begin to glow in a soft, faintly shimmering blue. Here we go, Terrence mutters. Phase 3. Little lights blink up all across the various gear and apparatus attached to me. In the enormous reel the cord of my harness is connected to judders with a puff of icy steam. The view through the stone archway of Object 5 begins to shimmer and change, beginning as a simple view of the opposite side of the room with its misty icy walls and some carefully watching scientists. The air between the stones begins to warp as if distorted by gas. I fortify my resolve. This is it. This is what you've been waiting for. Even if I only end up spending a few minutes in the plane, you'll be one of the few to have traveled beyond. The rippling air begins to shimmer like water, subtly tinted in a pale faint orange. The energy thrums. Good luck, Rebecca, Terrence murmurs beside me. Thanks, I reply. I got this. And the watery view through the gate intensifies in its shade of orange, shimmering and sending out waves to splash against the rocky arch. Until eventually, the view of the room through its doorway is lost entirely. Beyond now shimmers a pathway over tundra scrubland. Something towering and mountainous ripples in the far distance. All is tinted in orange. From the corners of my eyes, I can already see many of the scientists here scribbling furious notes. One of the cameras attached to me The little one on my right shoulder emits a series of electronic beeps. Experiment January 08 to be commenced as of now at 21:20 hours, Terrence says aloud. And with a deep, slow breath, I step forwards and across the podium, striding through the shimmering amber veil of Object 5. Out from the complex, and into the plane beyond. The air is richer here. It takes me by surprise, and I pause on the opposite side of the arch for a minute, simply taking a moment to breathe it into my lungs.
Everything good?
Terrence asks through the headphone in my ear.
Yes.
I reply, gathering myself.
All good. I'm doing okay.
I can do this. I can do this. I look around. Everything remains tinted in that curious shade of orange. Even the sky vast and cloudless. Is it cloudless? I wonder to myself. Or is it simply covered in cloud, uniform and formless? It's impossible to tell. I'm inclined to believe the latter theory, however, as I cannot see the sun. Let me tell you what I see. The world is barren. I stand at the top of a hill. All around me are more hills, all relatively low. They slope against and into each other, dusted with snow and covered in scrubland grasses no higher than my ankles. To my right runs a river. It flows between the hills. Not quite in a straight line, but meandering. Object 5 and I stand in the middle of a smooth, stone-paved road, leading directly ahead and directly behind, in a line straighter than the river as it goes up and over the hills. There are no trees, no bushes taller than knee-height, no animals and no birds. There are no mountains on the horizon. There's no anything on the horizon. To my left, right, and behind me, the hills just roll away into infinity. There's no hint of a forest or a mountain, or even any buildings. Ahead, however, directly ahead, is a colossal and monstrous statue. A carving perhaps, if it were covered from Everest itself, or Olympus Mons, or a mountain greater even than they. Its base is beyond the furthest hill, and is so far away that it appears less than opaque in the distance. The head of the statue is partially obscured by atmosphere. Up it towers, up and up and up into that orange sky. The statue is of a distorted man crouched in wait, with one knee on the distant ground, the other up by his chest. In one hand, he clutches an enormous curved horn, and his other is outstretched and beckoning. To me. To the sky. The man has what might be a sword in its scabbard at the side of his waist, and his face is downcast, looking to the world beneath him. An enormous stone beard billows out from his chin and across his chest, and in the center of that great grey forehead is carved a third and glittering eye. This eye looks out across the wastes, motionless but watching. The sheer size of the statue is dizzying. I become aware of Terrence's voice in my ear again.
Still doing okay, Rebecca? Hang tight. We've never seen a statue of this particular size before, but its appearance is consistent with other depictions found in previous expeditions. Rest easy. Get your first sample. Right, yes.
I mutter, crouching down to the ground and collecting some of the hard, frost-shielded and crumbly soil from the side of the path into my vials. I also take 2 of the blades of withered grass and place them carefully between the semi-plastic casings I was provided. It all tucks neatly back into various compartments of my jacket and the harness. Rising to a stand, there's really nothing further for me to do at this stage but to begin walking. So walk I do. I feel a subtle tug at my back as the coil adjusts to the motion, but I quickly accustom as I set off down the path. The smooth, stony path across the hills, heading steadily towards the great and curious monument ahead. The only sound is the tapping of my boots on the stone and the gentle rush of the river to my right, flowing steadily. For a while, nothing happens. These soft background sounds are occasionally joined by muffled speaking in my ear as Terrence asks something of one of his colleagues. Sometimes he asks me to take a sample or a temperature reading. Sometimes he asks me a question directly, asking me how I feel or what thoughts are coming into my head. But I'm doing okay. I'm curious for sure. I've waited a long time for this. Afraid too, but I would still 100% return if asked to do so. I'm getting no sense of Object 5's most dangerous anomalous property. The anomaly that stops its visitors from wanting to return home. The plane is breezeless, but I feel an arctic chill against my exposed skin. As I walk, as I cross over in between these desolate hills, the surrounding territory begins to change ever so slightly. Not in a supernatural way, but the hills start to showcase little piles of rubble, half-broken walls, small, ruined statues tumbled into the frosty grass.
Jesus.
I mutter into the mic.
Starting to get a little creepy now.
I keep walking and walking, though I don't seem to be getting all that tired. In fact, it almost seems like my levels of energy are increasing. Over to my left on a distant hill is a section of ruined and disconnected wall. Just a random piece of cracked wall. There is no evidence that it was ever connected to anything else. From this distance, it looks like something has been scrawled across the wall's stony surface. A message perhaps, in orange tinted white. I stop and stare at it in alarm.
Do you see that?
I ask the team.
It's a message.
I squint to try and work out what it says, but it's too far away. I make to step off the road and into the grasses to head over, but a warning crackles through the earpiece.
Rebecca?
Comes Terrence's voice.
We would advise against leaving the path. But it's not that far. I can see Rebecca.
He says, his voice clear and sharp.
Do not leave the path.
I hesitate.
Sure.
I reply after a beat, reluctantly turning away. Don't leave the path. And I continue my route. The enormous carved stone man in the far distance, the one that towers up and into the sky far, far ahead. I have walked for an hour so far, and yet this behemoth does not appear to have moved even in the slightest. Always on the horizon, forever out of reach. The monstrous watcher, observer of the plains, with that glittering third eye, he watches me. It's only a carving, a statue, a stone colossus beyond the horizon. But he's watching me. I can feel it. The narrow river to my right has been running alongside the path this entire time. I never noticed anything particularly unusual about it at first. But now, I am drawn to a stop yet again, and I crouch down at the edge of the path to get a better look at it.
That's impossible.
I mutter out loud.
Terrence, are you seeing this?
For a moment, there is no response through the headset. Just the gentle rush of the river. I watch it in amazement, trying to get my head around what I'm seeing. The water in the river is flowing backwards. It wasn't obvious before now, as the river remained largely level. But right here in front of me is a clear difference. A sudden rise in the river's height. There's even a small waterfall. Can't be more than a few inches high. But the water froths and rushes, and it rushes up. I don't know how else to describe it. The water is flowing in the reverse way you would expect. Gravity demands that water flows down. But here in this plain, or in this river at least, the water is flowing uphill.
How is it doing that?
I wonder out loud.
Terrence, should I get a sample of the water?
Another pause.
No, Rebecca. Please, do not leave the road at this time. Alright. No worries.
I continue on along my way, now conscious of the river's backward flow. I pass by more broken statues, more ruined walls. One of these walls has scrawled across it a series of loops and lines and shapes, just like that wall I saw in the distance, although it doesn't appear to showcase a legible message of any kind after all. I ask Terrence if they mean anything to him.
If what mean anything? The walls? No, the symbols on the walls.
There is a pause. The earpiece crackles.
Can you get a closer look?
I move forward a little, certain that the wall is in line of sight of the cameras. Another pause.
We are unable to see any unusual pattern on the wall on our end.
He says simply.
But it's right there.
And even as I say this, the wall suddenly shifts. I step back in alarm and watch as the stony surface of the wall starts adjusting itself, as if solving some secret puzzle. The stones all shift and slide into new locations, taking pieces of the scrawled symbols along with them, rearranging them.
Rebecca, your heart rate just shot up. What's going on?
They can't see it, I realize. They can't see what's happening. As the stones slide into their new positions with the subtle grinding of rock against rock, some of the lines and loops start to match up. I start seeing symbols I recognize. Letters. My eyes dart from left to right as words start forming before me. Then, finally, they settle into a sentence. The water flows backwards here. A chill shivers across my body.
Why?
I whisper, and after a beat, the stones start rearranging themselves once again.
Rebecca, can you tell us what's happening? What's going on?
Comes Terrence's voice.
The wall, it showed me a message. The water flows backwards here. Now it's about to show me another.
The shifting stones come slowly to a stop. You miss him. My heart lurches.
Miss who?
I ask in a voice barely audible, one I'm not sure even the mic picks up. But the wall does not clarify.
Rebecca, do you feel comfortable continuing the mission? Or would you like to return?
Comes Terrence's voice.
Only go as far as you are able. We already have a great deal of new data. No, it's okay. I can go on.
I reply, shakily turning from the wall and setting off up the path. My harness feels a little looser than it did at the beginning. It's not quite as tight. And it's not my imagination either. I can actually feel places around my chest and hips where it's starting to slide a little. I stride onwards, faster than before, across the hills and beside the impossible stream. I pass by another section of ruined wall, much faster this time. It displays the same two messages. The water flows backwards here. You miss him. A small cluster of stone beside the wall makes me double take. At first, I mistook it for a person. A child, perhaps, standing out there on the hillside. But no, it's not, of course. It's nothing more than a pile of rubble. The water flows backwards here. You miss him. The sky remains that uniform and unidentifiable color beneath the orange hue. The eye of the monolith ahead glitters ever on. There are no trees, no buildings, no birds. The road continues.
Rebecca?
Comes Terrence's voice, a little cracklier than it was before.
If you encounter such a wall again, please try to engage with it. See if it will display anything other than the water thing.
I didn't tell him about the second message. You miss him. I'm not sure why. I pass by another child-sized cluster of rubble that makes me look twice. A coincidence, perhaps? I think that perhaps it isn't, as I come across at last the statue of what was most definitely a young boy. Carved from stone, the boy's top half is now missing, but one arm from the elbow down is still visible, connected to his leg. I struggle with an emotion I find difficult to process as I stop to allow the cameras a chance to photograph it without any motion blur. The statue is close to the path, within reaching distance, and Terrence wants me to chip a small piece off as a sample. Reluctantly, I do so, but the procedure feels strangely invasive, unnatural even. You miss him. Images and memories of my little brother enter in my head as I walk. I can't help it. His smile, his warmth, that beaming 11-year-old face. Forever 11 years old. I start seeing him in the ruins and the broken statues. I can never get a good look at any of the statues' faces. The heads are missing, or the faces have simply worn away or cracked into rubble. One such statue stands complete. Mossy, but complete on the top of a nearby hill. It faces the opposite way. I am compelled to go to it, to check it, to see for certain. As if sensing my intentions, Terrence's voice comes through the headset.
Please don't stray from the road, Rebecca. Once is more than enough.
There's a pause.
In fact, perhaps it's time to come back. You've spent a long time out there in the plane now. You've achieved a great deal. No.
I reply, perhaps a little too quickly.
It's alright. I'm still of sound mind. But I might not get this chance again. Not for a long time. Let me go on a little further.
Another pause.
Okay.
Comes the response.
But any sense of mental discomfort, and you let us know, alright? Your vitals are good, for now. Heart rate steady. Your blood pressure has actually decreased since the mission began.
Terrence hesitates.
Just let us know, alright? Alright.
I reply as the headset clicks. So on I go, a wanderer across the plain. There are further sections of wall, never anything more than this. No structures or stairs, or even half-ruined buildings. Just disconnected random segments of wall that don't go nowhere in particular. Many display those strange shifting symbols. They change to one of the two messages. The water flows backwards here. You miss him. As requested by Terrence, I ask the wall a question.
Miss who?
I ask, fearful of the answer. The symbols change and grind into new locations. He can be found along the road.
This is a trick, isn't it?
I ask, doing my best to stay cool.
You're luring me in like you lured in the others.
The symbols rearrange. We cannot trick, nor deceive. There were no others here.
What's happening?
Comes the voice through the earpiece.
What did they say? It's telling me I miss someone. It's trying to trick me into leaving the road. What do they say exactly? It's gibberish.
I reply, lying. I'm not sure why. I'm reluctant to tell the truth. I suppose I'm fearful Terrence will pull the plug on the expedition and demand me back. I already lied in my psychological interview. The report too, for that matter. If he finds out about any of the stuff I've been keeping from him, I'll likely never work with Object 5 again. I'll never answer the mysteries that lie beyond its glowing and stony doorway. I press on. The message comes through again on more segments of wall. The water flows backwards here. The sound of the rushing stream rises gradually. Where it was once a peaceful backing melody, it now sounds more like a monotonous grinding, ever obnoxiously frothing. The statue of my little brother becomes more frequent. No, what am I saying? There is no proof that it's my brother. It's just some boy, some random stone boy. I'm not going crazy. I'm really not, I swear. I am of sound mind.
Rebecca, your heart rate has risen, and it's risen dramatically. It's been long enough. I think it's time to end the expedition.
Comes the voice in my ear.
No, look, I know what you're thinking. That I'm being taken over by the allure of the object. The anomaly that makes one want to never return. But I do want to return. I'm still of sound mind. Just a little further, that's all. I need to go a little further. Why? Because I think the world is trying to tell me something. The messages on the walls and the statues. I think they're trying to tell me or show me something.
I have increased my pace.
What is it about the statues in the ruins that are of such particular note to you?
Terrence asks.
They look familiar, that's all.
The statues are becoming less and less fake-looking, less ruined, and more complete. I gasp and stumble to a stop as I see one such statue up ahead. And it's him, for definite. The statue's expression is neutral, but the features are clear. It's Tommy, my little brother, just as I remember him, carved carefully into the stone. The wild grass rustles against the statue's base in the breezeless air.
Rebecca, it is time to come back. The mission is hereby ended.
I keep walking forwards, faster, until I am jogging. I see another statue to my left, halfway up one of the hills. It's Tommy again. The moss that covers the stone gives it the disturbing and yet beautiful effect of accurate shading and shadows. It looks like it could actually be him from this distance, as if he was still alive, running, playing, calling out to me.
Rebecca?
Comes Terrence's crackling voice, sharp and clear.
The mission is now over. I will activate the cord if you do not turn around this instant. It's my brother.
I admit at last into the mic, breaking into a run down the path.
I think he's here. I think I might be able to see him. I swear I'm not crazy. It's all around. You can see the statues, right? Please, just let me go on.
My voice, I think to myself. My voice sounds different. There is another statue stood atop the hill. A statue so realistic I have to squint to be sure that it isn't him. The beautiful boy that I haven't seen since I was a child myself. I breathe in the glorious clear air. My lungs have never felt fuller and healthier. Tommy? I call out. Are you there? Please, let me know if you're there.
Right. Activate cord retraction level 1, please.
Comes the voice of Terrence. He isn't talking to me. He's talking to his team. Lights start blinking on my harness, and I struggle to tear it off. It's looser than it was at the beginning, but not enough for me to get either of my arms out. I pull at the lock, but it won't budge. I feel the cord attached to my back grow tauter, and the resistance grows as I struggle onwards. Tommy! I shout, desperately plowing forwards. Tommy, are you there? The glittering third eye of the Colossus above me watches on as I struggle against the cord. I struggle, and I win, powering forwards, sweating with every step, but still moving. Terrence's faint voice comes through again.
Cord retraction level 2. Let's bring her back.
The cord tightens further. It draws me to a stop and starts tugging me backwards. I am at the base of a hill. A hill more important than the others. There is something on the other side. I can feel it. There is something of critical importance, monumental, and beyond significance on just the other side of this last hill.
Wait!
I shout.
Terrence, wait! Just one more hill. This is it. I can feel it. Please, one more.
But the cord pulls me back. I swear, I can hear the distant sound of faint, childlike laughter drifting to me through the windless air. And with all my energy, I resist the cord, my feet dragging on the stone in my doomed attempts to fight back. I try to dislodge the harness again. I stuff the cameras into pockets and throw off the headset. I catch a quick, level 3, before it strikes the stone. But at last, my battle with the cord is lost. It hauls me back with a force that sees me stagger and fall to the path, and I am dragged unceremoniously back along the stone, cursing and bruising as I try to grab hold of something, of anything to slow my retreat. It is all futile. "Wait! Wait!" I scream. "Please just wait. Let me go on a little further. Tommy! Tommy!" I am successfully at one point in returning to my feet, staggering and stumbling backwards in pace with the cord's retraction. But it doesn't last. My resolve gives out, and I bitterly collapse once again to the floor, allowing myself to be painfully dragged across the stony road. Once it becomes clear to the operators that I am no longer fighting back, the cord's speed is reduced back down to level 1, and I simply let it drag me back through the wasteland. I watch the shifting symbols on the first, now final wall, as I am dragged right by it. The water flows backwards here. "Goodbye," I murmur as I pass. And the symbols change rapidly to one final message. "No, you will return. Your water flows with ours now." And the wall disappears from sight behind the sloping hill. At what seems like long last, I am hauled through the shimmering gateway of Object 5. The surrounding color scheme is jarring in its change from orange to a calming, methodical blue. My ears pop in the manner they do when one drops altitude in an airplane. I gasp with the sudden change of atmosphere. Once I've been safely pulled down and away from the object itself, I watch as the LED on the wall gradually rises from -15 to -14, up to -13, and then higher still, all the way to -5. The view through the archway of Object 5 shimmers and ripples, and vanishes. The orange world beyond disappears, and my heart aches as I watch the world vanish away, and I struggle to keep my emotions in check. There aren't as many people in the room now as there were before. I wonder if they chose to leave, or if Terrence perhaps ushered them all away. I groan in pain, turning around on the floor and propping myself up on an elbow. Terrence crouches down beside me, and his face is a picture of concern. "I'm sorry, Rebecca," he mutters. Then he stops, and he stares. He holds my face in his gloved hands, turning it this way and that. "Hey," I say to him. "Hey, stop." He does so, but beckons me over some of his colleagues. Most raise their goggles when they get close. One woman puts a hand over her mouth. I groan and look between them. "What?" I ask them, mentally still traversing through the plane. "What's wrong?" One of the scientists takes her phone from her lab coat pocket and loads up the self-facing camera. She passes it to me. I look at the screen, and the face that looks back is my own. From 20 years ago. I am barely a teenager. I stare into the phone, into my eyes. I demand a mirror. The creases between my eyebrows have vanished. My hair is a lighter and more fuller color. My skin is smoother, shinier even. "Get her to the med swing and never checked over," Terrence mumbles, drawing away but still staring. What the hell has happened here? The de-aging effects lasted about a day. Within 24 hours, I have returned physically to my former age. A full psychological debrief took place, and I told him the whole truth. About what I saw. About Tommy. All of it. I was thanked for my honesty, to my contributions to the data we have on the object, and was promptly removed from further experiments involving Object 5. I spent a total of 36 hours in the hospital wing. I wore an arm in a sling for 2 days, and the bruises from my bumpy return healed up after a few weeks. And all I can think about is the plane beyond the door, about the statues of my brother, about the messages on the walls, and on what lay over that final hill, about what I would have found on the other side. I keep my head down. I do my work. But I can't stop thinking about it. I can't get it all out of my head. There must be a way back. Someday. There must be. An experiment this morning required me to head back down into that icy annex. I'm here right now, taking readings from one of our less glamorous objects. And whilst I'm here, since everybody's busy with their own business, I decide to go a little further than I'm supposed to. Not to Object 5, of course. Not yet. But to Object 44. The vending machine style thing in that icy walled little room. I remove my glove and place the fingertips of my right hand into the grooves. A light shines from the middle of Object 44. Fast and brief. And then as quick as it appeared, it is gone. A subtle whirring begins from its heart, and a faint, flickering coin-sized white dot fades into view behind the object's glass-like screen. It hovers alone for a moment, in the void. I wait for that trail of deep blue liquid to flow out to the right, to leak its way across the screen, for the yellow pathways to form and go their separate ways. But the liquid does not leak out to the right. It leaks out, instead, to the left. I watch as it flows the opposite way, and then disappears off-screen. There are no meandering yellow paths. There is only the one. The blue one. A moment more, and it fades from view entirely, along with that little white dot. I withdraw my shaking fingers and let out a sigh, my breath forming a misty cloud around my face. Back to work, I murmur out loud, as the words of the wall run through my head. You will return.